Hello, and welcome to Week 5, Unit 4 of Application Development for SAP Business by Design. In this unit, we're going to look at forms. Now, obviously, there's many ways that we want to be able to view and work with data in SAP Business by Design, and one of those is be able to provide printouts of some of this data in some type of format. And for us, those are forms. Now, there's lots of standard forms within the solution already. And there's an opportunity for us to be able to not only extend those standard forms, but also create our own forms, new forms, based on any kind of data that we want in any kind of format and layout. We have the ability to create these new forms and modify their layouts from the SAP Cloud Application Studio. And then with these forms, we can either print them or they can be emailed, faxed to a business partner, but all kinds of options. Now we're going to go ahead and create our own form today, and we'll be able to show how to have a preview button for that. Now there's a few tools you can use when working with forms. One of them is the Easy Form Editor, which is you can go in and just do some minor modifications. You might just add a field simply to an existing form, for example, and just place it in one spot and be done. It's not very extensive. If you want to do a lot more extensive changes, you want to use the Adobe Lifecycle Designer. And this is available for you to download. If you go to Application and User Management and then the Download Center, you can go in there and you can download the Adobe Lifecycle Designer as well as the plugin for it to be able to work with our forms. If you don't see that Work Center, just go in and make sure that you get it assigned to your user. So this is what we're going to go ahead and do. Let's go ahead and jump into the studio. Now I'm logged into the SAP Cloud Application Studio here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I've already installed Adobe Lifecycle Designer on my machine. I've also made sure that any file format of XDF is associated to Adobe Lifecycle Designer. If I go into the help under Developer Desktop and then Print Forms, it has info on what I need to do. As I mentioned, you can go to the Download Center to be able to download the actual Adobe Lifecycle Designer if you do not have it. Once you have it, you'll have to adapt the file type to that program, and then you should be good to go. Now I've already have that part done. I want to create my form. I'm going to again right-click on my business object, as we've done a lot of times now, and I'm going to say Create Print Forms. Now this gives me the option to create a whole new print form. I'm going to give it some info here. Description is a bonus plan form, and I can choose an existing group or create a new one. We're going to create a new one here. And I'm just going to leave that name there, say save, and next, and then I say what data I want to be able to provide to this form. So what data should even be allowed to be on the form. So we're going to add all this. I don't need the is consistent, but I would say the other stuff is reasonable. I could even add the employee name from the association if I want to, and be able to put that on the form. So let's go ahead and say next, and then what's the description? Default is fine, but we'll just capitalize it, and language is English, and finish. So now this creates the form interface for us. This is basically like a special type of web service that will pass the data to the form when we tell the system to create it. And I'm going to go ahead and say yes here, and you see it opens up Adobe Lifecycle Designer for me. Now, Adobe Lifecycle Designer is a very powerful tool. There is a lot of stuff we can do in there. We're not going to cover that in this course of this unit just because it would take a lot more time. It's a much more advanced topic for us. But we're just going to show some very simple adding here and get the form actually previewing for us. So I have the designer view open. I'm going to go to this data view tab on the left, and I can just start dragging in my elements. So for example, here's my bonus plan ID, the description. Maybe I want to show the rate that this employee has on their bonus plan. I might want to show the target amount as well. And you can see I can even move, after I add those in, I can move the forms around themselves and or the fields. Let's add that over here, currency code. Maybe I want to show the formatted name for the business partner. And if I just drag that, it's such a small little place to click. I could even say employee. And so I can do all kinds of adaptations here. For us, this is going to be enough right now. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Got to make sure I save it, and then I'm going to exit out. And once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and check this in and activate it. So this is just defining what the form layout is. We still have to go ahead and add a preview button on our screen to be able to preview it. I'm going to go ahead and open the UI Designer, and before we go add the preview button, I'll trigger one more thing. We haven't talked about business configuration yet. That's going to be in the beginning of next week, but we very briefly had to create our called our BOK element, and that's just a basic business configuration definition. And we need that for some of these items, this item included. We'll have to, let me go ahead and open my QAF in the meantime. Oh, I already have it open, great. I'm going to go ahead and deploy my business configuration and just tell it to say deploy all content. And this is needed so the system actually knows about our form and knows what the content is and how to trigger it as far as within the framework. So while that's deploying, let's go ahead and add our preview button. So I'm going to do a few different things here. I'm going to first go to my data model, and I'm going to say I'm going to add a new element or a data field to the root, and we're going to call this, the initial value is true, the type is Boolean, and the name is bool_true. We're going to need this later on. Now I need an output. So I'm going to go ahead and say add output, and we'll rename this to preview output, and it's going to need two different parameters. One is going to be bound to my field bool true, and the other is going to need my form group ID. So if I go back and open my form, it generated this group code for us. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to say here the name of this is group code, and paste that in. And then my parameter, if I go back here, sorry, I forgot the name of the parameter that we need. We need to let's create a preview button. We will need to add this force front end preview. There we go. Force front end preview. I always forget that name. So basically what we're doing is we provide an output that we will pass to the framework to a special component, a special model dialog, a pop-up that says we want you to force the preview of this, so it's automatically going to open up the screen, the form for us, and then here's the group code, here's the actual form that you should be looking for. So we have that. Let's go ahead and right click on the model dialog and say add new model dialog. And we're going to reuse an application one. So let's go into the application UI to the reuse folder. And there is the document flow. Not the document flow. We want the, where did we put it? Where did we put it? Not the event handler. We are looking for the model dialog. Here's our model dialog. Controller, not there. We created our output. Here we go, model dialog. We use output management, not document management. There we go. Output management, there is the preview. Okay, and then if we look at this, we now have to give it the binding. We have to tell it how to get our info. So I'm going to go ahead and say add new navigation, and I'm going to use that output I just created, the preview output, and we're going to use this to pass in this data. So I'm going to bind the group codes and the force front-end previews together. And so now when we call this output, it's going to call this reuse preview model dialog, which is a pop-up, to be able to say, here's the form, and trigger the automatic preview of that form. Now the final part here is we'll go ahead and add an event handler. We'll call this preview event handler. And preview. This will call our output. So fire output, our preview output. So we have the event handler, which can call the output, which takes care of actually telling the framework to load the form. And the last part is just adding a button. That way we can be able to call this event handler itself. There's a standard preview button. I'll just reuse that. It has the right name and text for me. It'll have the right look, and I'm going to say preview handler. Great. Now that's all that's left is to test this out. So once that's done activating, I can go back to the studio here. Let's go back here, and let's go ahead and preview from our owl. Actually, I think last time that was slow, so we'll go ahead and load this automatically. And we'll go ahead and log in with Sales O2P again. Good old Kate Jacobs. And if I go to bonus plan, and we'll just edit the first one. Let's edit that. Here's my preview button. It's going to load that data for us. And let's go to preview. Oop, I have a problem. It says that the node reference is not correct and the attribute binding is missing. So that's okay. And it even gave me a little warning message down here. So let's go ahead and go back to our UI component and see what's wrong. So I have my button, that's fine. I have my event handler. Ooh, not what I wanted. Let's go back here. I have my event handler. We'll tell all these to close, that way they stop bothering us. Our event handler is there. That should be calling our output, which is great. It is. We have our output, which is passing the right info, and then our model dialog, which is there. And one thing I realize now that I missed is that I actually have to do a binding here, and that's what it mentioned, right? My node reference binding was missing, and we actually have to tell it to, it doesn't like me because I've already had a problem here, bind this. So let's go ahead and it added it. Let's save and activate that. So we bind it to the root of our data model, and that's how it's going to be able to know to pull what data to pull into the form. We told it what form to load, but not what data to pull. So we have that binding. Now we can go back and try and preview again. So let's go into here, and we'll log in again. Perfect, it's already logged in for us. Let's go to the preview, and just tell us to not show again. And preview this. So you see it's going to open up the pop-up. We see our form there default, and we told it to force the preview to true. And so now it automatically just opens up our form, and now we see our form. We see the data there, what's the bonus plan ID, the description, rate, the amount, currency code, and the employee. So this is obviously a very crude form. I would probably want to clean this up and give it a nice format with some good header text, and give some good context behind it, all the different data there. But at least now we're able to add our form and get it into the system. So basically we can add our own forms and generate them, and obviously be able to put them into the application. We use the Adobe Lifecycle Designer to create our form. Although very basic in this case, you can do a lot within the Adobe Lifecycle Designer itself. Also, you can take your extension fields, and if you right-click on your extension object and say extend forms, you can also publish your extension fields to those forms for that standard object. And then be able to adapt those forms either simply or more advanced like. So there's lots of work that we can do with forms within SAP Business by Design. And this is just one case of being able to add our own simple form. So that's it for this unit. In the next unit, we will look at mass data run objects. Thank you very much.